Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are back with another episode of Daily Palantir, back on our regular scheduled programming. Last week, went to Vegas, so wasn't able to get out all the episodes every day, but we're back one episode every single day. Now today we've got a lot to talk about. There's three major things I want to discuss in this episode. Number one, the NHS deal getting delayed again till mid-November. We'll discuss why it got delayed, what I think is going on behind the scenes, and if we're even going to get it in mid-November, which is 2 weeks away. Number two, Joe Biden issued an executive order on AI, and one of the people that's determining how that executive order is going to be implemented works for Palantir. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, and we have to discuss what Palantir's role is going to be in this new AI regulatory world. And finally, the 10K that came out from Palantir. We had earnings last week. I found out two things that were really important on the 10K that I want to bring to everyone's attention because most people don't have time to go through the entire 10K. One is about remaining performance obligations. And second is about the cloud computing contract that Palantir signed for the next 10 years up until 2033 and why they amended that contract. Don't go anywhere. We've got a lot to discuss. Okay, let's start off with NHS news. So this news broke last night, Sunday night. I saw it break and it was kind of annoying to see this break, but honestly, we all knew that it was going to happen. NHS England has not yet proven its case on FDP. The Federated Data Platform, the platform that we believe Palantir will win, which is a $588 million contract, has now been delayed till mid-November. With the award of the Federated Data Platform contract to be said to be delayed until mid-November, NHS England appears to be seeking to drum up support for the FDP and secure public backing from the health system leaders for its £480 million flagship data platform. Now, I'll leave this link in the description and you guys can check it out and see what they have to say. I mean, the report doesn't add too much context. It just talks about why the NHS is doing this, why it's important, and kind of, this is from digitalhealth.net, which is one of the blogs in the UK. It's also saying like there's not that much analysis or evidence towards the UK public for why they need the FDP. And essentially the article goes into the fact that, look, the UK public doesn't really trust what this FDP is. They don't really know what this FDP is. They know there's a problem with the NHS. We know they have backlogs. We know they have wait times. We know that it's, been a bureaucratic system that hasn't been fixed for many years. But the problem is they don't really know why this FDP is going to change it. One paragraph I want to read from this. If public trust is to be gained and the NHS is to have a realistic chance of gaining the potential benefits of new data platforms and realizing the value of its rich data assets, which is all the data that patients would be giving up to the NHS, then NHS England and Secretary of State should hold off on any contract aware and take more time. They should have the courage to invest in proper evaluation of the pilots, dissemination of lessons and findings, and then use this as the basis for engaging with patients. I disagree with that stance. Personally, I think these are people that are not techno-optimists. They are not trying to embrace how technology is going to change the future. They are trying to have every single regulatory sort of hurdle, every single obstacle you could jump through in order to try to make something real happen in the names of data privacy and fear of data exploitation, etc. And I think a lot of that is warranted, at least the moral side of that is warranted, especially from Europe that has a very strong stance on data privacy via GDPR regulations. The problem is, I think most of these companies are concerned that Palantir is going to exploit data. And this is where, quite frankly, I mean, look, if you're going to blame anyone, I'm not one to make excuses. Let's blame Palantir. Let's blame the NHS. They have done nothing really to communicate why Palantir is not going to steal your data. One CART BBC interview is not going to do it. Some fancy procurement process over 2 years. I mean, the NHS started this in March of 2022. It's been a long time for them to have been able to convince people that this is important. If I was the NHS, what I would have done when I started the procurement process before I even picked Palantir or anybody else, and the reason I started the procurement process is likely because Palantir said, hey, you want us to fix this? We can fix this. You can start a procurement process, but if you want to fix it, we can build it. And then they were like, oh yeah, we should probably try to fix the NHS. In March of 2022, I would have just said publicly, hey, everyone in the UK, the NHS sucks. We know it sucks. But we give you all of this for free. And if you don't want to pay for it, which I'm sure none of you do, you 70 million people that love not paying for this, we love giving it to you for free. These are the democratic values. These are the values that we believe in the United Kingdom is valuable, for us as a population. Well, then you got to let us make it better. And there's some companies we have in mind. There's one company that even honestly influenced us to even think of building an FTP. But there are some companies that are going to come in. They're going to help us do this. You can have as much say as you want over learning about these companies, etc. But at the end of the day, we as the NHS have to make a decision because we're giving you this for free. It is for free. We're not paying anything for this. If you're not paying anything for this, then that means we should try to make the best system we can possibly make for you guys, and you should trust that we're going to make a system that doesn't exploit your data. If the NHS had at least communicated or advertised this message over the past 2 years, I mean, by 2024, this will have been 2 years of them doing this procurement process, then I think a lot more citizens would know what the FDP is, because this article talks about how people don't even know what this is. They would be inclined to do more research to learn about what Palantir actually is, because if you research the FTP, a bunch of Palantir links will come up, and then you're like, all right, who's Palantir? And originally those patients would probably have a negative perception of it, big data, spy tech company, whatever, but eventually that negative perception would have worn off if you would have seen the benefits like Palantir's pilots in the Chelsea and Westminster trusts, hospitals in the UK that reduced backlogs and wait times by 28%. Like when you see that data, when you have a better understanding of it, and you're a UK citizen that is benefiting off of it for free, you start to recognize, wait a second, I'm not paying for this. And the NHS is ready to dish out hundreds of millions of dollars to really transform and change our lives. Maybe I should give it a shot and not be so hesitant. I think the reason the NHS delayed this contract until mid-November is because if patients don't opt in with their data, the FTP is useless and they will look like a joke if they roll out the FTP, and all the patients across the entire United Kingdom are like, well, we don't want to give our data. We don't trust Palantir. So I think that's why it was delayed. Remember, in September, it was delayed until mid-October. Mid-October passed. Now we're November 6th. Mid-November is what? November 15th. I personally do not think we're going to get an answer on November 14th or 15th. I think it'll be delayed again until December, and then eventually from December until 2024. So if I had to bet on it, I don't think we're getting an answer anytime soon. I do think Palantir has been picked. It's obvious. Again, my biggest telltale is Bloomberg. They put 4 of their best journalists to break the story that Palantir is getting the contract. You don't do that if you're Bloomberg, right? You don't make that big of a mistake. You're too trusted of a news publication to do that. So I think Palantir got the deal. The NHS needs to learn how to communicate it. They haven't communicated it. Unfortunately, Rishi Sunak is, hosting all these AI conversations with Elon Musk. Maybe he needs to actually communicate to the public for why they need to actually build something that is AI machine learning oriented when it comes to data so that they can fix healthcare. That seems way more important to me than talking to Elon Musk. As much as I love Elon's not fixing your healthcare system, right? So at the end of the day, I think we'll get the deal, but I think it will take time. I cannot stress how important it is to get this deal, especially from what I'm looking at in the numbers. International government revenue last quarter, $79 million. I mean, US government was like 320 million, 315 million. To get 300 million from the US government last quarter and 79 million, not even 100 million internationally, international government and international commercial is not doing that well for Palantir. We need this contract to help not only on the numbers, but to get more contracts internationally from different governments. And I hope we get the deal. I'm pretty sure we'll get the deal. I just don't think it's going to be announced anytime soon. So we'll see what happens. But NHS contract has been delayed again till mid-November, and we'll see when they announce it. Okay, next thing we got to talk about, Biden issued an executive order on AI. And I think this is really important to talk about. So CodeStrap tweeted this a couple days ago. Every Palantir shareholder needs to read the Biden executive order on AI right now. That's all I'm going to say. That tweet got 90,000 views. So obviously a lot of people were interested in that. Arnie, he said, if you're confused, check Arnie's reply. Arnie responded to it. And this is what Arnie said. It said it reads that we need Palantir. So it seems like this Biden EO is really important. Crossroads, another great account on Twitter. I highly recommend following him. He did a little bit of a deep dive on this, and this is what the Biden executive order had to say. So Biden issued an AI executive order this week with 8 guiding principles. Here's the fact sheet on one of these, which has ramifications for Palantir. So one of them is ensuring responsibility and effective government use of AI. This is important for Palantir because Palantir makes a lot of money off the government. A majority of Palantir's revenue is government, not commercial. So they need to make sure that the government is in line with what Palantir is trying to do. It says AI can help governments deliver better results for the American people. It can expand agencies' capacity to regulate, govern, and disperse benefits, and it can cut costs and enhance the security of government systems. However, use of AI can pose risks such as discrimination and unsafe decisions. To ensure the responsible government deployment of AI and modern federal AI infrastructure, the president directs the following actions. This is the executive order from Joe Biden. Number 1, issue guidance for agencies' use of AI, including clear standards to protect rights and safety, improve AI procurement, and strengthen AI deployment. Number 2, help agencies acquire specified AI products and services faster, more cheaply, and more effectively through rapid and efficient contracting. Basically speaking about the IRS, the DoD, whoever wants to procure any type of AI software, these are the guidelines by which you inquire how to procure them. And then finally, accelerate the rapid hiring of AI professionals as part of the government-wide AI talent surge led by the Office of Personnel Management, U.S. Digital Service, U.S. Digital Corps, and the Presidential Innovation Fellowship. Agencies will provide AI training for employees at all levels in relevant fields. Now, why is this important for Palantir? Well, if only there was an AI infrastructure company with IA level 6 clearance, had a product called FedStart, which leveraged their DoD clearance level to other AI companies such as Calypso AI, that was announced last week, as a way to onboard into federal procurement pipelines quickly and effectively. Oh, wait, there is. So there's a lot to break down here. Biden is basically saying, look, if you're a government subsidiary, an IRS, any type of agency that works within the United States government, we know you're going to acquire AI software. We know there's no way you're going to survive unless you build out your moat as a agency and you become faster, more effective, more efficient, which means you have to compete in a growing economy and you have to acquire AI tools. We're going to allow you to spend that money on those AI tools. However, in order to do that, here is X, Y, Z that needs to be resolved. All of that you can summarize as it needs to be safe, secure, and work. Palantir's FedStart is essentially what that is. Remember, FedStart is not a product. FedStart is a platform that other startups that are selling into the government. Why are they selling into the government? Because they raised billions of dollars from VCs that want to find the next Palantir, the next Anduril, the next Databricks, right? They're looking for the next defense tech companies that are in the world. So they're funding them with these billions of dollars. Those guys can't sell into the government until they have IL level 5 security clearance. In order to get that, you can use Palantir's FedStart, which essentially just creates a platform for you to containerize your software offering within Palantir's secure accredited environment. As per the last earnings call, we have 9 different FedStart partners. I would imagine that number is going to go up quite dramatically as all of them have to comply with these executive order regulations in order to sell into the government. That just means Palantir is going to get more revenue from other companies using their platform to sell into the government. Now, here's where it gets really fun. Okay, so this is another thing Crossroads tweeted here today. AI.gov sure seems like Palantir has its hands in helping to create, especially this section. So this is the U.S. government's part of the website where they focus on AI. It's called AI.gov. The United States stands to benefit significantly from harnessing the opportunities of AI to improve government services. The federal government is leveraging AI to better serve the public across a wide array of use cases, including healthcare, transportation, the environment. The federal government is also establishing strong guardrails to ensure that its use of AI keeps people safe and doesn't violate their rights. That's one of the core theses of the government in terms of being able to protect its citizens, making sure you have hard guardrails that don't get violated when it comes to AI. Well, it shouldn't shock us. Palantir's head of AI, Anthony Back, is one of 10 individuals to sit on the subcommittee connected to AI and law enforcement. So this subcommittee on AI and law enforcement, as directed by Congress, the National AI Advisory Committee will establish a subcommittee to consider matters related to the use of AI in law enforcement. The subcommittee will provide advice to the president on topics that include bias, security of data, adaptability of AI, and a lot of other things. You've got a bunch of people who are on this list, a lot of professors of law at Vanderbilt. You've got chief revenue officers from Rank 1 Computing. You've got all these different people from all these different walks of life, another professor of law from the University of Arizona. And then you've got Anthony Back, the head of AI at Palantir, who is one of 10 people who is specifically, as per the words of this subcommittee on AI and law enforcement website, going to be advising the president on how to understand AI, how to understand, what happens with AI, and how to understand how governments can more effectively use AI. This is bullish. Okay, if you didn't figure out by now, this is bullish. And the reason why this is bullish, by the way, let's just look at Anthony Back. This is who he looks like. Machine learning and data science. He lives in San Francisco, and he's been working at Palantir for the past 7 years. Used to work at Google as well. Was a mathematician at Stanford. Obviously a guy who has a lot of history in the AI ML space, and he's from this world, so he understands how it works. Why is he the head of AI at Palantir? Because he understands what AI looks like for an enterprise and for a large organization. Why was he one of 10 people selected in the subcommittee of AI law enforcement? Likely because the federal government was like, hey, we need people that are really smart. We know what they're doing. We've procured a ton of Palantir services. I mean, they just paid Palantir $300 million last quarter in 90 days. Why don't we get someone from Palantir that knows what the hell they're doing? Let's have them on the committee. What does that mean for shareholders? I think that just means that this guy, along with these other 9 people, will help direct how the federal government should be thinking about AI. how they should be understanding AI, and ultimately where the future of AI-enabled government services are going to go. That doesn't mean just because he's here that like Palantir is going to get a bunch of contracts, but that does mean that if there's some bad regulation or there's some regulation that just doesn't make sense, you have the input, you at least have the ear of the president, and you can say, this is what should happen. This is what should not happen. This is how companies and, in the private sector are actually using AI services. This is why it would be effective for the government. Here's why it would not be effective. Here's why you guys can't procure in this way if these companies don't have these guardrails that could put citizen data at risk. Like, here's all the different nuances for why the bull case for Palantir, which is actually protecting data in a meaningful way, can now be implemented into this subcommittee of law enforcement on AI. So this is a big executive order from Biden. We're probably going to get a lot more executive orders in the future in terms of how AI will be enabled, not just in the United States. Rishi Sunak, president of UK, prime minister, just hosted a big conference around AI. All these countries around the world that are seeing the revolutionary era of what is happening with AI. ChatGPT, OpenAI just had their new conference today. They announced a crazy amount of things. It's just like changing the world when it comes to artificial intelligence and LLMs. This is happening at rapid hypersonic speeds. Every government in the world is going to need some type of regulatory framework. And if Palantir is part of most of those governments helping them build that regulatory framework and ultimately procuring the services that they need from Palantir because Palantir lives up to those regulations, then I think there is a long wind of growth of revenue opportunities for Palantir. But the fact that one of the 10 guys on the committee is from Palantir, like, that's just insane to me that they trusted him enough to help guide their decision-making when it comes to implementing safe AI. Okay, last thing we're going to talk about today is some things from the 10K that came out from Palantir's earnings. This is if you go to their website, you can check out all the stuff in terms of the nitty-gritty details. They don't want to bore you in the actual earnings presentation, or they don't really have to show in their earnings presentation, but this is the stuff that shareholders like really want to know about if you go a little bit more deeper into the financials of the company. So there's two things I want to talk about. Number one is remaining performance obligations. So remaining performance obligations are basically how much money the company already has in total contract value that they've basically acquired as revenue, but they haven't shown it as revenue on the actual balance sheet because they haven't performed labor for it yet. They haven't met some milestones, etc. So I wanted to give everybody an update. The company's remaining performance obligations were $987 million as of September 30th, 2023. That means as of September 30th, 2023, we have almost $1 billion of revenue that we already basically we have it, right? It's with us. It's just, it cannot be recognized yet because we have to fulfill the services, of which the company expects to recognize approximately 57% of revenue over the next 12 months. So I want to do the math on that. 57 times 987.7 million. That's about $563 million that we're going to see in the next year already that has been acquired for Palantir. So I don't know what the 2024 guidance is going to be like yet because we haven't gotten that guidance yet. We're going to get that in Q4. But you could imagine $563 million has already been achieved for Palantir. They just have to recognize that over the next 12 months. And then 35% of the 987 million. So let's do that. That's about 345 million over the next 2 years after the next 12 months will be recognized as revenue. So just the update for people to understand what remaining performance obligations are, and also what does it look like for Palantir. We want this number to be big, right? You don't want this number to be like $100 million, right? You want this number to be really big, and then over time, the company starts recognizing it. And basically every quarter, it helps investors also understand, based on their RPO, how much more do they have to do in terms of deal value, how many more contracts do they have to get to be able to grow at the level we want them to grow. CARP promised a couple years ago that they're going to CAGR at 30% year over year until 2025, which means by 2025, if you do the math, they would be bringing in $4.5 billion of revenue. Obviously, they're growing at 70% year over year, so they have a lot of work to do to get back up to that 30% number. The RPO seems decent. It probably could be better if international government revenue was stronger. I'm assuming that RPO would be much better. If we get the $588 million NHS contract, that $987 million is going to go into the 1-point-something billion in terms of revenue that we'll be able to recognize. But you want that number to be big because ultimately we want to try to get to that 30% CAGR. And if we somehow get to that 30% CAGR after 2 years of basically not CAGRing at 30% because the next 2 years are phenomenal, which I don't know if it'll happen, but if it does, that would be pretty crazy. And it would be a case study on just like giving the company time and letting them execute. Okay, last thing I wanted to bring up from the 10K is this. Now, Dom mentioned this on our Palantir podcast, and I went to check it out. Here's one of the purchase commitments that Palantir has. Let's get into this. In September 2023, the company, Palantir, amended one of its third-party cloud hosting service agreements. Under this amendment, the company has a commitment to spend at least $1.95 billion over 10 contract years through September 30th, 2023, as well as certain additional minimum usage commitments, among other things. Any and all previous payment obligations held to such third-party cloud hosting services and agreements were terminated concurrently with the signing of this amendment. The commitment amount for the contract year beginning October 1st and ending September 30th, 2024 is $154 million. Now, why does this matter? So the reason this matters is because this is more than what they were obliged to purchase before. So if you go to the 10K from last quarter, you can see here, this was in Q2. In December 2019, the company entered into a subsequently amended and minimal annual commitment to purchase cloud hosting services of at least $1.49 billion over the next 6 contract years, with a bunch of optional carryover periods through September 30th, 2029. Now they're saying, well, we canceled that agreement, and for the next 10 years, we're going to spend $1.95 billion, so another $500 million on top of that. And we're going to increase the spend we're doing with one of our third-party cloud hosting agreements. So the big 3 clouds are Google, Amazon, and AWS. We don't know which one this is with, but we do know that the agreement they had last quarter, which was started in September 2019, so it had to be amended anyway soon because it's already been 4 years since that contract started. Now they're like, look, for the next 10 years, we're going to spend $1.95 billion. Over the course of next year, they're going to spend $154 million from October 1st to September 30th, 2024. The reason this matters for shareholders is because that means Palantir is getting more business. So in September 2019, if they were like, all right, over the next 6 years, we're going to spend $1.45 billion, $1.49 billion. And now you're 4 years into the contract, that you're almost done remaining with all that obligations, and you have to re-up on this third-party cloud computing hosting service contract. Now you're like, all right, screw that. We know we have probably like $400 or $500 million more on that deal. We're getting so much business because obviously AIP is growing, Foundry is growing. We're seeing it in the customers, we're seeing it in the numbers, we're seeing it in the actual revenue, that Palantir, again, doesn't provide cloud compute. They provide a layer on top of cloud compute, so they still have to provide cloud compute for the companies that are using their service. So Palantir is like, well, hey, AWS, I'm just going to make an example. Remember how we said we were going to pay you XYZ? Yeah, can we pay you more? Because we have a lot more workload now on our servers and like we need more cloud compute. And so they amended the contract to pay $1.95 billion. I mean, that's almost $2 billion, basically $2 billion over the next 10 years. And for me as a shareholder, the way I interpret that is that means we're getting more business, more revenue, more customers using our services, which means if we have more people paying us to be able to use Foundry, AIP, whatever it may be, we as Palantir, because we don't provide the cloud hosting, we have to get the cloud hosting to be able to make sure those services run, which is why Google, Amazon, and Microsoft have some of the most profitable cloud businesses in the world. It's just absolutely insane. Cloud, like 90% of businesses are still on-prem. They're not even on the cloud. So that's a whole discussion for a whole nother day in terms of what those businesses will look like in the next 20 years. But it does go to show that if Palantir is getting a lot more business, they need a lot more cloud compute, and that's why they're amending this contract with one of the 3 providers. I would imagine it's AWS, Amazon, Azure, or Google. So overall, that's a good thing. I mean, you want to see the company spending a lot of money on something like this because they're making way more money than what they're spending on cloud in terms of being able to deliver their services because they have a lot of clients using their product at the end of the day. So those were 2 takeaways from the 10K that I thought was important for all shareholders to know. I'm going to be digging a lot more deeper into this 10K over the next couple of days, trying to get some more nuggets of information and wisdom. But look, overall, this earnings has been pretty good. Stock has been doing well. Stock's a little bit down today, but it was up 30% over the past couple of days. Yeah, it's 1850. It was at 1890 last Friday. You would imagine the stock's going to be down a little bit if it's up 30% in a week. Overall, it's not too bad. So a lot more stuff coming up this week. I have to analyze that BBC interview. I never got a chance to go into that, so we'll be talking about that. And we'll keep going deeper into what's going on. NHS contract is delayed. Biden executive order has some of Palantir's main people on it. And some more insights from the 10K. Thank you guys so much for listening and watching. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.